guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be making a gnome door. Well, you may be wondering what a gnome door is. Well, years ago, I used to tease my mother, and it wasn't because she was short, it was just because the ground was built too close to her butt. And with that, I made a little miniature door about yay long that would be a garden decoration that we kind of joked around that would be her entrance, and we called it the gnome door. And this isn't anything new. This isn't anything that I invented. They've been around for years. They're a fun little project. You can really use your imagination on these things, and it all starts off with some simple shelving pine that's 3/4 of an inch thick. Well, all I've done is I've gone to my local big box store and I bought some of this crap 3/4 inch thick pine. It's really nothing special. This is just over 9 inches wide, and I've cut off a length roughly 16 inches long. This is actually a little less, but you roughly want 16 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this out in 1 inch widths because we want a bunch of 1 inch strips, and they don't have to be perfect. We're just going to mark this. You may be wondering why I just don't set my fence on the table saw and rip these off using the table saw. Well, the reason for that is we don't want nice crisp lines. This is just a fun little whimsical project, and truth be told, if there were such a thing as gnomes and gnomes were to build these doors, they sure as heck would not be perfect by any means. So this is what makes this project so fun, is that you can really embrace those little imperfections and really run with them and have a bit of fun with it. So we're going to mark this all out here. This actually worked out in my favor because we've got a knot in one of these. I may keep it in the project. It may add a little bit of character. But now that I have all of these lines 1 inch apart, I'm going to take it over to the scroll saw because I don't want perfection here. And I'm just going to run these lines through. I don't care if they're crooked. I don't care if I waver on the line. It doesn't matter. This is the best part about this is this doesn't have to be perfect. So let's get over to the scroll saw. We're going to use a number 7 reverse tooth blade, and we're going to cut these into their 1 inch strips. Now we've placed the pieces here. We have them all cut on the scroll saw. We've placed them in no particular order, and you can see that if I squish them together, they really don't fit tight. And that's what you want, because if this was a gnome door and it was made by gnomes, there would be no table saw. It would all be hand done out of rough cut lumber, that sort of thing. And they would never fit nicely together. So that is the kind of look that you want, that rustic kind of look. And I really love this sort of thing. So now that we have this, now that I've spoken of rustic or rough cut wood, we now need to make this so that it's rough cut wood. And for that, we're going to get out a Dremel tool. Well, I have my Dremel tool set up with, I don't even know what you'd call this bit. Maybe one of you guys might know what it's called, but let me pan away from here and I'll show you what it looks like up close. There it is. This bit is kind of like a carving bit, kind of like a rasp. I'm not sure what to call it, but either way, it does a great job for what it is that we want to accomplish here. And what that is to carve out tree bark kind of thing or grain into each one of these slats on one of the sides. Now I have 9 slats here. I only need 8 for the door, so I have 1 to mess up. But truth be told, you really can't go wrong with this project because there's no right or wrong way to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start carving these out, and I'm going to show you how to go about getting that kind of tree or bark put into these pieces of your gnome door. Well, there is no special talent on how to do this other than to just draw out what you might think bark on a tree would look like. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can make short little lines like that, or you can make long lines. Like that. But either way, you just want to carve it out. You don't want to worry about making mistakes or about if it looks perfect. It doesn't matter. You see how rustic that looks? I'm going to continue carving this because I can't talk over the noise of this machine. I'm going to finish this one particular slat, and then I'll show you a close-up of what it looks like here. And once you get all your carving through the center done, just take that Dremel with that raspy tool and just run it down the sides and soften these edges a bit. Don't try to round it perfectly, just give it a little bit of a round over with that tool. And once you get that done, just give it a light sanding just to take off any of the chunks and burrs that may be sticking up. Now, if you played along and had a little bit of fun with it, you should have something that kind of looks like this thing here. And I think it looks pretty cool. It, kind of looks like a log, kind of looks like a bit of a tree. It's rustic. It's a craft, guys. This is not fine woodworking. It's fun. So if it doesn't look 100% perfect, or you got pieces that broke out of it or stuff like that, don't sweat it. Go with it. Make it part of the project. That's what makes this project fun. It's also another great one for kids, by the way, to help out with carving this stuff up. I want you to take all of them now, and you're going to have to carve them all. And when you are done, you should have 8 of these. So go ahead and carve all of your pieces and come back and see me when you're finished those 8. Well, I'm not exactly sure how well this is translating to the camera, but I have all of these all carved out into their kind of log forms, and it's hard to see right now because it's all uniform color, and that is going to change. But the one thing that I want to caution you about while you're shaping these is if you find a detail or a little thing that you like say in this one here, I made this little knot hole here. If you really like the way you've done that, you think that looks fantastic, don't go around putting that on every one of the boards, because then it just doesn't look right. It looks fake, even though it is fake. You know what I mean. Anyway, these pieces here, like I said, are roughly 16 inches. I really don't like the proportions, so I'm going to cut them all down to 15 inches long. Well, the next step of the project is completely optional, but it is one of my absolute favorite parts of the project, and it involves a bit of fire. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to take a blowtorch and fire it up, and we're going to burn all of these pieces on the face. Now don't go crazy, just burn it enough to make the grain stand out. You can see here what amazing results you get and how all of that carving that you just went through and finished up with now really just jumps right out at you, because some of it burns, some of it doesn't, and it really gives you the contrast that makes it stand out. So this step is optional, but I really do like doing it. I love the effect. You can use it on other projects as well. You know, nothing wrong with burning your pieces every once in a while, as long as you don't completely burn them. But this is the next step. Throw some fire on it and give it that contrast that really makes it stand out. And now that we have all fulfilled the pyromaniac in ourselves, you end up with something that looks like this. Now, again, you can burn it if you like, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can burn it as much or as little as you like. I really like it to be dark and a nice dark contrast, so I really give that a good burning there, and you can see how much it stands out, and I really love this look. So, well, we've come to the point now where the boards for our door are done, and now we need something to mount it to. So what we need to do is measure the size of our door. We know it's 15 inches long, and you want to cut a piece of MDF or 1/4 inch hardboard, whatever you have, and we're going to make it 1/4 of an inch larger than each of these long sides and 1/4 inch longer than the top. We don't want any overhang or any excess on the bottom. So add 1/4 inch to the length and 1/2 inch to the width. The next thing that we want to do is we want to make some pieces for the door frame. And for that, we're going to need to rip some pine at 1 inch wide. Now just make sure that you have enough to go around both the left, the right side, and as well across the top of your gnome door. The next thing we want to do is we want to cut the rabbet that'll house the MDF or the backer board for our gnome door. And for that, I've set the blade to a height of 1/4 of an inch. As well, I've set the fence so that the outside of the blade will strike at the 1/4 inch mark. Now, after we get the first pass done, then there's no adjustment to be made. You only have to reposition your feather board, flip your pieces, and run them through for a second pass, and that will release the parts and provide you with a rabbet that is 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch that your backer board can fit into. The final step in the process is to miter our corners, and essentially we're building 3 sides of a frame. So for the top part you'll need 2 mitered edges, and for our sides you'll only have to miter 1. You'll just need to pay attention to what side of the miter or what side of your board that 1/4 by 1/4 inch rabbet is, so that you don't accidentally end up with it on the wrong side of the board. So once you get those pieces all mitered up, then you can glue the assembly together. Well, now with all your 45s and all of that jazz and your backer board cut, you basically are going to end up with an assembly that looks like this. And you can see here that the bottom is flat. That's because this is the door frame. And when we glue all this together, our door is going to sit inside of our door frame here. So that is our next step, which is essentially to glue this whole assembly together. And then once it's all glued together, there's not much you can do from that point until it's all dried up. So glue this all together, and then, well, you know, as I say in almost every video, come back and see me. I think I forgot to mention that you want to glue up your frame assembly first. I may have given the impression that everything gets glued together all at once. What I've got here is just a spacer that's cut so that we're not crushing this in to keep everything square while it's in the frame clamp. But now that this is all dried up, now you can remove it from the clamps and glue in all of your door pieces that you carved out and burned and all that stuff from earlier. I've unclamped everything, given the door frame a good sanding, and now it's just a matter of applying some glue to the back of each one of these slats and just sitting it in your frame. We're not even going to be too worried about clamping or any kind of jazz like that. Just put a strip of glue on each one and set them in your frame. Have a little bit of an issue in that our last one doesn't fit. We may need to trim that one down. So if you run into that trouble too, trim yours down as well. Stuff happens. All right, so I've managed to trim up that last one. It was a little funky there for a while, but we got it trimmed up. Everything's good to go now, and now you can sit and let this whole assembly dry up before you do anything else with it. And we're back, and the door has dried up. Truth be told, it's actually a whole week since I've been in the shop because, of course, life got in the way. But we have our door, it is made. It's now time to decorate it because although it is a door with a door frame, there's no knob, there's nothing else on here. So let's head over to the bench and we're going to talk about what we're going to need in order to accessorize this door. Well, what would a door be without hinges? And what I've done is I've picked up a set of these. These are dirt cheap metal hinges from the big box store. I think I got them for $1 for a set of 2. And we're going to need 1 hinge of this type. I also have, basically this is off of our old Gnome door. This was the handle and it's nothing more than a drawer knob, and it's quite dirty and it's kind of worn from being exposed to the elements over the years. So I'm going to clean that up on the brass wire wheel. And we also have this really cool drawer pull. Now, this, let me get a close-up of this because this is really cool. I use this as a door knocker, and although I ended up getting this one from Lee Valley, it is a little pricey as far as putting an accessory on a door goes, or on a decoration, but it really makes the project, in my opinion. I'm going to give you a link to that in the bottom descriptions if I can find one. But again, this is worn and it's weathered, and I'm going to clean this up on the wire wheel as well. And the one last thing that we're going to need for this, in order just to kind of finish it off, is if I can get the bag open to show you here, it is upholstery tacks. So black upholstery tacks, or silver, white, gold, whatever you want. It's your door. Do it as you see fit. So the first thing that we're going to do in order to decorate this is, for starters, I'm going to take the door over to the table saw. I'm going to cross cut the bottom just to level and square things off. We're a little off kilter down here. I'm going to clean up these 2 pieces, and then we're going to deal with the hinge. Well, this hinge actually represents 2 hinges on the door, and you can see in the side panels here that the cleanup is well underway of the original knob and the original lion drawer pull, but we've put a metal disc cutter or a metal cutting disc into our Dremel. And what we're going to do is we're going to slice off half of this hinge. Now, it shouldn't take much to slice through it. But we're just going to continue and use this cutting disc to cut the hinge apart. And once I get this one cut, I'll show you what we're left with. And there we have it, one half of the hinge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the grinder and just clean up that edge ever so slightly, and we'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to mount these when we got this second half cut off. Now, depending on if you want your door to open left or open right, and of course it's not going to open, you will choose what side of the door frame you want to mount these hinges to. Now, I have put the bottom of each hinge at 2 inches up or down from the top and the bottom edge of the door, and we're just going to butt it up against the side of our door piece here, and I'm just going to use a couple of 1/2 inch, probably number 6 screws. I might even see if I have some brass ones over there. And we're going to mount these hinges. Just center punch them. You can drill a pilot hole if you wish, and we're going to screw them in place. They are just a decorative piece to give it the look of being a hinged door. And you can see I have some pilot holes drilled there. And I found some number 6 by 1/2 inch brass screws. You can use whatever you have in your shop and just screw them in place. I'll warn you though, if you're going to use brass, don't torque these things down. They snap off pretty easily, and be sure that you are drilling pilot holes, especially if you're going to be using brass. Alright, so we'll put the second one in, and then we'll move on to the next stage of accessorizing this door, because you know it's all about the accessories, right? The next step in decorating this door is to add the doorknob. So we have our old drawer pull here from our old door, and what we're going to do is we're going to place it just below center. So with the door being 15 inches, we're actually going to bring it down to 9 inches from the top. So just a little below the center mark. That should make it look right. And we're just going to mount it just inside the second slat to give us something to screw into. Now we're going to drill a through hole for our hardware, and due to the length of the hardware and the thickness of our slats for our door, we may need to counterbore to get that to mount. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a little bit of anti-seize compound on here, because obviously this door, as the other one did, is eventually going to wear, and I'm going to want to reuse this hardware, and a little bit of anti-seize compound really goes a long way to being able to get that hardware removed without damaging anything. So I'm going to mount this hardware, and then we're going to move on to the next accessory. Our next step is to mount our drawer pull, aka door knocker, and this thing is awesome. I just love it. I don't even know what to tell you. Pick an area that looks good, that you think looks good there. For this here, I'm going to go 3.5 inches down from the top. We're going to center it on the door, and you can see it's been polished. Let me just show you the before and the after of this here. This is the before it got polished up, and this is the after. It's quite the difference. This is worn brass, so it's not your normal high polished brass, but it looks great. So we're going to mount this in the same fashion that we mounted the doorknob, remembering that you may need to counterbore at the back. So mount it up. Well, the next design element that we have here are these upholstery tacks. And it's a simple thing that we're going to do, but it makes a big difference. We're going to line up a square on our project. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down with that square off the edge of the door about roughly 1.5 inches. It's not imperative. These doors are not perfectly square, so we're just going to line that up there. And once we get that lined up at our 1.5 inches, we're going to take an upholstery tack and we're going to put one upholstery tack in the center, roughly, of each one of our slats. So we're going to get our first one lined up here, roughly where we want it. Give it a couple taps, and then once we get that done, now we're going to clamp our square in place to give us something to line up against across this door. Now, you may want to use needle nose pliers like what I'm doing, because if you're anything like me with little small upholstery tacks and little nails and stuff like that, if I swing a hammer 10 times, I'm going to hit my fingers 9 of those times. I'm going to swear 8 of those times, and I'm probably going to completely miss on the 10th time. So use that needle nose pliers just to line them up along the square and get them all hammered in here. And once you get them all aligned, remove your clamp, remove your square, and then, keeping your fingers well out of the way, hammer them home. Now you want to repeat this process for the bottom of the door, exactly the same way. Line up your first, set your square, tack them all in, remove your square, hammer them home. And last but certainly not least, we want to get one in the middle. Exact same process, guys. So line it up and whack home another 8 of these upholstery tacks in the center of our door. Well, you can see what a drastic effect those upholstery tacks make as far as decorating this door. And there's one last thing that I want to do, and I want to do a little bit of wood burning above this door, and kind of like a quirky little saying. So I'm just going to draw it out first before I burn it, and we'll burn it after this. So we're just going to, you can do this if you wish. I mean, this is not part of the project. The door is pretty much done at this point in time. So it's up to you if you wish to add some quirky little writing here or what have you. But I'm going to do it in kind of like a fantasy kind of style here. You know, it's not anything that you need to worry about, but either way, let me burn this in, and then when I come back, I will show you the final product. And there you have it, a gnome door. Guys, this project is a lot of fun. You can really have some creativity and really let your imagination go nuts. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. If you don't want to burn it, don't burn it. If you don't want a wood burn in the top, or if you have another quirky saying, make a little sign. Make a sign on the door. Do not disturb sign maybe on the doorknob, eh? Something different, something, you know, fun. Like, just let loose and make something with wood. Make some sawdust. I mean, you can make different shapes. This one is rectangular, but of course, that's not necessarily the way that you have to do it. You can make it whatever shape that you like. If you want to make it rounded, make it rounded. It's nothing more than gluing your slats together first and then cutting around it with a scroll saw and then making your frame out of thicker wood. It's no big deal. Try it for yourself and make one of these things. Guys, it's a lot of fun. This one will probably get hung up with a sawtooth hanger, but the old one had a keyhole in it that used to go down over the screw and slide down. I might even do that, who knows? But if you're going to do the keyhole, just remember that you've got those slats. You want to be careful how you route between them if you're going to route a keyhole slot. Guys, give this a try for yourself. Have some fun with it. And you know what? It may be a silly little project, but it was a heck of a lot of fun and I enjoyed doing it. So if I enjoy it, hopefully you will as well. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in again this week, and I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video. One thing that I forgot to mention about these doors is that if you're going to put this one outside, guys, make sure you seal that pine, make sure you seal that wood. Several coats of varnish will do. You don't have to be pretty with it. Just slap it on and seal the wood, and it will wear and eventually it will rot out. That's the nature of putting wood outside. But at least with those several coats of varnish on there, it will give you years of enjoyment. And oddly enough, the more it wears, kind of the better it looks. It's a weird kind of thing to think of it that way, but that's the way it works with these sort of things. So guys, try it yourself, and I'm going to see you again next week.